Okay, this is now tarot lesson number 169, and it's mainly about the Hanged Man. This is the Hanged Man. I'll leave it there for the moment. So my printer doesn't work, so I'm going to have to read from the screen because I've got a couple of quotes to give you. So I want to make 2 points that will improve your life, and I'll get to them in a minute. And it's kind of the difference between behaving correctly according to what society says and what parents and teachers and all sorts of people tell you to do that's correct. So there's that way of behaving, but then there's also you operating in your own correct way. It's still correct, but it's more the emphasis is on you acting in harmony with yourself, and it's correct what you do, even if society doesn't get it or doesn't understand, or it's different from what society would recommend that you do. So this kind of all began, let me just move that monitor, the mouse. This began with, I watched a video on the 18 best art books for learning how to paint or something like that. So there's a bit at the beginning of the video, and I'll put the link in the description below. At the beginning of the video, I need to talk for a while rather than show you cards for the moment, because I just need to talk. So at the beginning of the video, the fellow doing the presentation said, practice does not always make perfect. And we're thinking about tarot cards and we practice with them, but what are we doing and how do we practice? Because practice itself does not always make perfect. If we're not learning new concepts and using these concepts to change the way we're actually thinking, then we don't improve. So it's one thing to look at the Hanged Man and go through, it means suspension and delay and all the rest of it. But unless we're introducing new ideas to the Hanged Man, new ideas that we come across in our own life, not just from watching other people talk about the card, but it's important that you also get your insight and your ideas and apply them in your own way, because it's correct for you, in your own way, to the Hanged Man or any other card. So if we're not learning new concepts and using these concepts to change the way we're actually thinking, then we don't improve. And the next bit, he talked about, because he was talking about painting and going outside, he said, when we're outside, or when you're in your life with people, not at home, in your room, whatever, looking at a tarot card. When we're outside, we encounter so many different things that we need to understand and learn and really craft a holistic way to think about what it is that we're seeing. And that's for art, learning to do art. But it's also for, really it's for us to become more comfortable with cards and to be able to make more sense of what they indicate, so that we can give answers to people's questions, and so we can uncover the underlying, not the underlying meaning, but the underlying activity of a particular situation. You know, because it's what's going on and what seems to be going on and what's really going on below the surface. So in order to give you the 2 points that will improve your life, I need to tell you a little story about what happened to me a couple of days ago. So the other thing is, somebody in an earlier video, I talked about this little finger of mine and how when I was thinking harsh thoughts about somebody, I tripped and bent this finger. And somebody left a comment that she had been driving along thinking unkindly about somebody, and she got pulled over and got a ticket for speeding. And she never speeds, but so that's just something to, thank you for leaving that comment. I didn't reply to it. Okay, so I wanted to do some live stream, and in order to do that, I needed a cable to go from the camera up there to the computer. So I went to Canada Computers on Queen Street, and I thought, when I first thought of doing the live streaming, I thought I should take the camera with me and make sure that the cable fits. Then a couple of days later, I happened to watch a video where the fellow said, to do this, you need a mini HDMI cable and an HDMI cable. And so I thought, okay, that's what I need. And so as I was going out the door, I thought I should take the camera with me. But then I thought, no, I don't need to, because I saw the video. I talked myself out of listening to myself. And that's the problem. What happens, or what would happen to you or to anybody if we began to pay attention to what we're saying, or what ideas come to us and what we decide to do and how we behave and how we go about our daily life? If we would pay attention to the thoughts that we have and see where they lead and see what happens. Because I went out the front door without the camera. I got to the store. They've got a wall with like 1,000 cables. So I said to one of the assistants, can you find me a cable, a mini HDMI to HDMI? We went to the wall. He handed me this thing, this box, and I took it, paid for it, came home, opened the box. It was a micro HDMI cable, not a mini, and it didn't fit the camera. So a 2.5 trip to the store and back meant I had to go back, or the idea was I would go back and get a correct cable. But the point is, I got the wrong, if I had taken the camera with me, as I thought of and ignored and talked myself out of, if I'd taken the camera, I would have been able to check, and I would have discovered that it was a micro, not a mini. Although, if I had taken the camera with me, I would have been a different person buying the cable. I'd have been a person with a camera instead of a person without a camera. And because if I'd gone to the store with the camera, I would have been more in harmony with myself, even though it seems ridiculous. I would have been more in harmony with myself. The fellow would have picked up a mini HDMI cable in the first place. But because I was sort of out of sorts, I think, because I didn't have the camera, because I ignored myself, I ended up with a problem. And I think that's point one for how to improve your life. Begin to pay attention to the thoughts that you have. And rather than talk yourself out of it or ignore it, wonder what you're telling, or realize you're actually telling yourself something. So maybe try it and see where it goes and what it leads to. So back here, I had the wrong cable, and I thought, well, I'm not going back. It was freezing outside. I can't be bothered going back. I'll do something else. And I sat and I tried to do something, and I couldn't get into it. I just could not settle to doing something else because my mind was fixed on this wrong cable and what went wrong. So I think, so on the one hand, pay attention to what you're doing. That will improve your life. The other thing is, when you're not quite right, or when you're out of sorts in some way, what you do is you remind yourself of your general aim or general direction, and that will settle you down. And then you can get into doing something productive, maybe, or getting into doing something that you enjoy. But it's more like, instead of, because when I was trying to do something, I've got this list of things to do, and I looked at it and I tried, I couldn't be bothered, and I was fighting with myself to do this thing that I knew I ought to do, but I couldn't. So when you're in a situation like that, you know, when you're in an airplane, if you've been in an airplane, the cruising altitude is 35,000 feet. So if you're at 35,000 feet, you can look out the window or the porthole, whatever it's called, and you can see the land below you. I'm assuming there are no clouds, but you've got this overview, and you've got a high level. You can see what's going on, but it's different. So when you're stuck or struggling, remind yourself of your 35,000 feet view, and get an idea of what your aim or what your direction is. And that will reconnect you with your inner being, with your inner self, with your true purpose. And you're not fighting, you're not forcing it. You're sort of reconnecting with what's already there within you. Because I made this note a few days ago that the inner self, we're born with an inner self, and it takes time to get to know it. And I think this is what we're doing if we pay attention to the ideas that come to us and work with them and see where they lead. Because you can do something that turns out badly, and then you realize, okay, that turned out badly, now you know why, and now you know what to avoid. Whereas it can turn out well, in which case you also know what to promote. Because the day after, or the early morning after I had been working with this idea of the 2 points, I woke at 4:30 and I thought, wait a minute, I'm going to say to people, pay attention to what you think about, or what comes to you, what ideas you've got, and follow through on them. But then I thought, what happens if your idea is to go and destroy something or harm somebody? What do you do about that? And then I thought, you can't judge the idea of paying attention to your thoughts until you've tried it. It's a bit like you say to a child, try this vegetable, and they say no. And you say, why not? And they say, I don't like it. And you say to them, but you never tried it. How do you know you don't like it? I think it's the same way with this idea of paying attention to yourself. So if you work with the idea for a few days, I think that you're not going to want to harm other people. I think we just don't, because if you're in the situation where you want to harm other people, how many 100,000 times have you ignored yourself over the last 20 years? I'm sure there's a lot. So you end up, or you're in a position where you're sort of out of whack, out of sorts, out of sync with yourself. And so it's not really surprising that you are frustrated and you think, if I could just destroy this or smash this, it would relieve the tension and make me feel better. But if you're in the habit of listening, paying attention to yourself and obeying yourself, you don't end up so frazzled or so angry that you feel the need to be violent with other people. So I may as well just go on. I could stop, but I'll just go on. Okay, so part of the video on learning to paint, the fellow talked about how if you want, at the end of the 19th century, if you wanted to paint, you had to go to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, where you learned to paint. And in talking about what happened there, the instructors, there was this idea that in a composition figure, you've got 3 or 4 people. If one person was too high and they were out of harmony somehow, if a figure was too high, it was called le pendu. That was the name for it. And le pendu is French for the hanged man. And this is where it all began, this hanged man thing. So what they did was they used a plumb line. You get a weight on the end of a piece of string, and it gives you a correct vertical on the canvas, so you can see if something is right or if it's hanging the wrong way. Because using a plumb line to get a perfect vertical on a painting allows you to solve the problem of misaligned relationships. Because when we look at a picture or a painting of people in a row, or people in different parts of the room or different parts of a scene, it ought to be aligned. If it's aligned, we can enjoy it. If it's misaligned, there's something wrong with it, and we know there's something wrong with it. So the plumb line allows you to solve problems of misaligned relationships. And then I thought, the hanged man. So what's the hanged man about? It allows you, or it gives you the chance, or it's important to solve problems of misaligned relationships. So when the hangman comes up, it may, or especially with the hangman reversed, maybe it's saying, take a look at your relationships with people, or your job, or your possessions, or your children, whatever it happens to be, whatever the question is about, because the relationship between you and the object or the person or the situation is out of alignment. So figure out what to do to get things in alignment, and then you solve the problem. You're not getting rid of relationships with the Hanged Man, because in some other case, maybe with the Death card, you're getting rid of people that you don't like or people that are annoying you. But with the Hanged Man, you're not getting rid of the relationship, you're realigning it. You're sticking with it and working with it, but you're making it better. The other thing is, I thought with the Hanged Man, if you wanted to, okay, when I thought of the Hanged Man and the plumb line with the weight here and the string here, I thought this represents gravity. So the Hanged Man represents gravity. But if you wanted to represent gravity in a card, you wouldn't have the person hanging by the neck from something, because that's punishment and that's death, and that's painful because you're hanging from your neck. So if you want to represent gravity, you can't do it. And gravity is important. It's a law of the earth, and it means that you can't just step off a building, step off a roof and float gently to the ground. You're dealing with cause and effect, or you're dealing with certain things to do and certain things to avoid, because if you don't avoid it, you're going to suffer. And that's what the Hanged Man can represent. But if you want to represent gravity, you can't have the person hanging. You have to have it this way, upside down. So the idea is still there. It's a plumb line. You've got gravity, but you're not automatically suffering from it, because hanging is punishment. And so when I began the notes, I thought, I'm going to get to the end, I'm going to talk about gravity, but I don't know what to say about gravity. What more to say than this idea that the Hanged Man isn't punishment, but the gravity. So I don't quite know what to say. Maybe leave a comment and tell me what you make of gravity, or how you would relate the idea of gravity. Because gravity is two things. You've got the weight of the pendulum or whatever. You've got the weight going down, but you've also got the Earth's the gravitational pull of the Earth, which is drawing towards you. So with the Hanged Man, you've got two things going on. You've got weight bringing you down, but you've also got the attractive force getting you to go in that direction. And it may be that with the Hanged Man, we're not supposed to just focus on one dynamic or one activity. We're supposed to recognize that, yes, we're moving towards it, but at the same time, it's pulling us towards it as well. And this the weight, it can be, because the head is down here, maybe with the Hanged Man, your thoughts are dragging you down. So reassess your mental personality, or understand that some thoughts lift us up and some thoughts drag us down, which goes back to the beginning of this video where I'm saying pay attention to your own thinking. And maybe with the Hanged Man, you, on the one hand, you can be thinking of an idea and you do it and it works well, but you can also be thinking of an idea and you do it and it doesn't work out well. But now you know that's not the thing to do, so it's valuable. And maybe that's the point about the Hanged Man. It shows you the value is not so much what works, because that's easy and you enjoy doing it. Maybe the Hanged Man is more about showing you what doesn't work so you can do something about it and not be beating yourself up and not be repeating things that don't work all the time. I mean, doing things all the time that don't work, because we tend to do that. You know, something isn't good, but rather than change it or handle it differently, it's so easy just to keep our fingers crossed that it's going to change without us having to actually do anything about it. Okay, that was that. If you've comments, leave them down below, please. and I'll see if I can take a look at them. And that's it for the moment. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, bye-bye.